Welcome everyone to the 5th annual UXies. As you can see, our Twitter is at UX Awards and UXies if you can get on. And I'm thrilled for all the interest and the fact that all the seats are taken. As you know, you should probably not take any seat with your bags, etc., because we were sold out. So moving right along, I wanted to start by just talking a little bit about the awards. We were the first awards dedicated exclusively to exceptional UX. We began here in New York in this very room in 2011. And we started as a coalition of the local groups like IXDA, UXPA, and then we went national and now global. And we started because there were no awards for our industry and for us as professionals at the time. Of course, now there are quite a few. But at the time, our aim was to validate our contributions. And as an awards, we're still a little bit different. We're judged by a consensus of annually selected experts and the public. And we're solely about UX, as well as we have a goal to advance the industry and be a platform for intensive learning and inspiration, which is what I hope that you all experienced during the day. We've got a mission here, and we've got 5 key points to our mission. The first is to evangelize the essential value of UX. And the second is really to show the impact of UX by demonstrating its value through exceptional examples. We also want to honor the best in the industry, practitioners, companies, projects, lead by example through these examples, and evolve the discipline and craft through our group discussion so we can learn and be inspired. We started in 2011 and in this room, and we started because we were fighting for relevance. Nobody cared about UX, and this is only 5 years ago. We were in the back office. There were no awards that really focused on what we brought. A lot of people didn't know what UX was. We had to explain to everyone every time we met them what user experience meant. And at cutting edge at the time was mobile apps that had localization services, so-called solo-mo for all of us who were there. But now we're in a very different place. You'll see tonight a preview of where we're at. We have Internet of Things, physical to digital products and ecosystems, complex service design, cutting-edge tech and natural user interfaces that go well beyond a 2D screen, UX-driven business models, transforming education, government, policing, aviation, B2B, and pro sports. And that's all in just 5 years. And if anyone had a chance to read the New York Times this weekend, which I did not, there was an article about IBM hiring designers by the hundreds. And that's because the world needs design thinking, and it needs us to help solve some of tech's greatest challenges. So it's really our moment. So come here much? I wanted to just find out, we can't really see much, but I wanted to see, how many people in the audience have been to a past UXie? A few? Probably about a dozen. How many have won an UXie, sponsored, or been a judge in the past? Another few. And how many of you were here in 2011? So that's awesome. Thank you for your support. I'm glad to also see that there's a lot of newcomers. So with that in mind, here we are at Parsons where we were 5 years ago, and we want to just take one moment to thank our hosts. David Carroll is here. He is the Associate Professor of Media Design and the MFADT program. And we want to thank you for hosting us. So now I also wanted to introduce the judges. We've got 8 judges, as you can see, 2 from the UK, 1 from Seattle, 3 from the Bay Area, and 2 from New York. And it took a lot of time and effort to judge, probably more than many judges thought it was going to take when they agreed to this. So first off, we've got Alex Cuthbert. He's Director of UX at PicsArt. And he was previously leading the UX design team at Google Translate. He, previous to that, led UX at Postini, which was acquired by Google in 2007. undergrad from Dartmouth, PhD from Berkeley, lives in San Francisco. Alex,
Oakland.
where are you?
Oakland. I live in Oakland. But
Okay, sorry about that.
lived in Brooklyn.
So Alex, you recently left Google after working on Google Translate, which is one of my favorite apps, to work at PicsArt. How does PicsArt compare to Google in terms of your approach to UX?
Well, so Google Translate, as many people know, is a very international product. And because of that, we did a lot of research in different parts of the world. PicsArt has a very similar profile, 80% outside of the US. They're both massive. I think there's about 200 million, over 200 million installs for PicsArt and over 500 million for Google Translate. And the thing that really excites me about both of them is the human element of connection. So if you've ever tried to walk up with your phone to somebody and say, I don't speak Chinese, but my phone does, it's a very interesting interaction design problem because they're looking at your phone. You don't see what's going on. The mic shuts off. There's all sorts of crazy interaction pieces. And the top queries in Translate are, hello, how are you, and I love you, for those who didn't see the Super Bowl ads. And for PicsArt as well, people are sharing the things that are the most meaningful and beautiful to them. So I think this shared global user base and the human connection are the two common elements.
Great, thank you. Next up, we've got Bill. Bill's the founder of Tectonic and former design director at Microsoft, where he had a 20-year career leading design for Encarta, Windows Media, Zoom, Xbox, and many others. And he now has his own firm, Tectonic, with great clients like Bang & Olufsen, Beats Music, Sports Illustrated, living in Seattle. And he teaches at the University of Washington. He was also a former judge and winner from Communications Arts Magazine, IDSA, and many others. So, Bill, you had a 20-year career at Microsoft, and you worked on some of their most important projects. What's the most interesting project you worked on after Microsoft, and how did Microsoft help you? And can you please answer in under a minute?
Mine was too long.
Okay, well, let's see. I'd have to say Bang & Olufsen has been an amazing client. So that has to be the one. This company, I don't know if everyone's familiar with this Danish consumer electronics company, but they hold design like so high, as opposed to maybe other large corporations that you might have worked at. But things are changing. Things are changing for Microsoft, and that's awesome. But Bang & Olufsen really allowed us to come in at the very beginning of the process, and gave us an opportunity to help them see how Bang & Olufsen should really be expressed in the software. They've done a beautiful job with hardware. What's Bang & Olufsen software like? And that was a great opportunity in helping them ship their new flagship music product. So that was an easy one.
Next up is Giles. He's managing director at CX Partners, a respected UK consultancy, and a frequent speaker on UX around the world, as well as 2013 IE Summit co-chair. He began his career at British Aerospace and then moved into the web in the 90s, BSc in physics, went to the University of Bristol, and author of this great book, Simple and Usable, which is a great book that I use in my own UX teaching at General Assembly. Giles, I love that book. What inspired you to write that? And are you working on another?
So why did I write Simple and Usable? I guess because I've always been fascinated by the idea of simplicity, and generally when you look at really complicated things, there's some underneath it all. There's something simple, some rules, some ideas that kind of bind it all together, and that ability to kind of take something simple and to build complexity out of it, or to pack all of that complexity back into a few simple rules or axioms, is the thing that kind of fascinates me. And so, a lot of people write a lot of very odd philosophical kind of waffle on simplicity, and I wanted to see if I could make a book that was very practical, that gave people things they could pick up and do right away, and make stuff simpler. Write another one? man, you must hate it. That's the hardest thing I ever did in my life. And it's going to take a few more years of rest before I do another.
Ian is Executive Director and Global Head of UX and Design at Morgan Stanley, where he leads a global team of talented design professionals developing next-generation financial services software, and he also won a silver for Morgan Stanley Matrix here in 2011. He has over 15 years of experience in UX and design, lives in London, and has a BA from UT Austin. So Ian, you've been at Morgan Stanley for several years, and in that time, financial services has really evolved, and now they have started to realize that great UX is really going to be essential to their survival. So how much does Morgan Stanley prioritize UX? Do they get it, or are you still in a battle for relevance? And how do you convince those pesky financial services people to change?
Less than a minute. Yes. I mean, hopefully from my talk earlier, one could draw the conclusion that I've largely conquered the organization, I think, in terms of accepting the value of design by various means. So I think in terms of, do I understand the value of design broadly? Yes. Is it top of mind as part of the investment strategy? Broadly, yes. Are there other things that compete in a limited, in a highly regulated market for attention and budget? The answer is yes. So there is still a battle for which things come first, and whether, for instance, it's better to build the right system to meet some regulatory control, or build a system that meets regulatory control so they're off your back so you can go do something else. Those things always come about. I think institutional is slightly different in the sense that we live in the world regulatory tower, and so we have an interesting opportunity to shape the direction of where we go sort of our own steam, which is looking for ways to improve stuff. Retail is a slightly different world, right? So anyone who's working in the retail space is pretty aware of the disruptions that are happening because of fintech. So I kind of always imagine it as, institutional lives in a kind of a walled tower, retail in various levels down below, and the sea is surging up and washing away the bits along the bottom. That doesn't mean that the foundations for institutional won't change as a result, but I think it's 5 to 10 years out.
Great, thank you. So now we have Jake. He is principal and founder of Local Projects, which uses architecture and technology to create amazing new physical and digital experiences. And he's worked on such projects as the 9/11 Museum, Cooper Hewitt Smithsonian Design Museum, Cleveland Museum of Art, and he's won every top design award, including the National Design Award, a Clio, Fast Company magazine. And we also went to ITP together at NYU. And before that, he was at Northwestern. So Jake, Local Projects has gained global reputation for great museum design. How does UX, based on your definition, fit into the largely physical installation-based work that your firm does? Also try with be within 1 minute.
Sure. So first of all, thanks so much for having me. When you think about any type of design, right, you're creating some type of an experience, you're communicating something. In our case, we think a lot about the ways that emotion and storytelling can impact all of our lives. And so whether it's graphic design, whether it's telling a story, whether it is creating a building, it brings you through an experience. And user experience is a huge part of that. For us, we like to allow people to participate. So whether you're walking through the 9/11 Memorial Museum and telling your own story about 9/11, or going to the Cooper Hewitt and you're able to actually learn about design by being a designer. Every visitor is given a digital pen that invites them to be designers inside of the museum and to share all their design with the world.
Great, thank you. Next, we have Jennifer. She's VP of Digital at McKinsey, where she recently joined to build a global design team, helping clients on digital strategy and UX. And she's a former design leader at Hot Studio, Facebook, and Frog, and Apple, amongst others, working on large projects for Apple, Disney, Cablevision, NASA, and many others. Frequent speaker also in the design community, and also an ITP alumni. Plus, she has a degree in design from Carnegie Mellon, living here in New York. So Jennifer, you've had an incredible streak these past few years, first having Hot Studio acquired by Facebook and then landing at McKinsey. How does McKinsey and the projects you're working on now compare to the kinds of projects that you led at Hot Studio or the culture that you experienced at Facebook?
Thank you. And I have to do this in under a minute, I know. I just have to say, though, that the music feels like the 70s dating game. I'm totally grooving on it. But that aside, so Hot Studio was fascinating. It was a small design firm that was based in San Francisco, and I was running the New York office. And I think what I loved about that was it was very social innovation focused. And so we got to focus on things like, you know, improving girls' health in Africa, or rural farming in India, or things that, generally speaking, tend to be outliers in projects. So imagine my surprise when we decided to get acquired or acqui-hired by Facebook. And being on the leadership team, I had the opportunity to spend a few years there, and that was great. I think it was a tremendous time of learning for me because it was so UI focused and very sort of screen based and pixel based. And the thing that I think I drew the most on from Facebook was data science. I fell in love with data science at Facebook because there was just such tremendous sort of opportunities for big data and how we bring that in, as well as user insights, into the design practice, which I think is just sort of super nascent and really exciting. And then moving on to McKinsey, which, if you've heard myself and my colleague Jennifer earlier, was sort of one of those really who wants to build a design team moments. But it's been a wonderful experience. It's been about a year now. We have a global design team of about 50. We need about 2,000, so if you or your friends want to come and bring 5 friends, please feel free. But I think the thing that I love about it is we are working with, you know, the sort of the CEOs and the heads of state and government of the world's sort of leaders and top thinkers and most sort of bright clients out there, which is mostly like 90% amazing and great and 10% truly exhausting. But we get to really affect change that impacts the world, and that's kind of amazing. Working in design firms that I've loved dearly, like Frog, and sort of spending time, you know, taking weeks, months, years to build up that relationship with the C-suite or the boardroom. It's kind of amazing to get dropped in at that level and problem solve at that level. So I feel really fortunate.
Great, thank you. Next, we've got Katie. Yes, we're gonna have transitions the whole night, so little surprises here and there. You gotta spice it up. Katie's the head of experience design at AirBNB, where she leads designers defining Airbnb's online and offline experiences. She joined AirBNB from Green Start Venture Design, where she was partner and creative director working on startups. And prior to that, she was creative director at Frog. And Katie studied industrial design at Art Center College of Design, and she taught at California Colleges of Art. So Katie, what's it like working at this hyper-growth, design-driven, quote, unicorn like Airbnb? How do you keep up with everything that's happening and on top of the growth and intense product demands that are placed on you while retaining product and design quality? In a minute.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I would say a part of being a company that's in hypergrowth, certainly the only constant is change. I've been there a little under 2 years, and my team has quadrupled. It was 10 people when I started, and now it's about 45. So basically, every 3 months, we need to rethink the way we do things, how we communicate, how we stay aligned, how we collaborate. So it's a good thing I'm a designer, because I can constantly iterate and design the way the organization works, or at least with design organization. I was aware of this coming into it. 2 of our core values really signaled this to me, as 1 is be an entrepreneur, 2 is embrace the adventure. So it's like, well, roll with it. And we hire folks that can do that. We hire folks that are ready to embrace that change and go with, you know, new possibilities for the future. And we're not just designing our product at the end of the day, we're designing the way we work in our company. And so it was a challenge I was excited to be a part of, and that's how we do it.
Fabulous, thank you. And last, we've got Peter. Peter is an experienced design and product management consultant, now living in Oakland. And he's co-authoring a book on building in-house design organizations. But he's most known for co-founding Adaptive Path in 2001, probably the most well-known UX consultancy out there, where he was instrumental to its growth. And he more recently led the global design team at Groupon, growing it from 30 to 60. And he also coined the term blog, and he's been blogging ever since 1999. He went to UC Berkeley and lives in Oakland, as I mentioned. So Peter, in under a minute, can you tell us how you think UX has evolved since 2001 when you started about Adaptive Path?
Sure. I mean, in 2001, we were a web user experience firm. So we thought the goal was delivering, workflows and wireframes. And clearly what's changed since then is kind of a recognition of the entire user experience. If you saw Katie's talk earlier today, kind of offline, online, digital, human to human, et cetera, all of that is now kind of the material we have to work with as designers. And probably the other big shift, and why I'm writing the book I'm writing, is the shift for design moving in-house, unlike it ever has before. Just seeing kind of companies trying to figure out what to do with this design competency that they are being told they should have and don't really understand how to use it best. So those things.
Great, thank you. Okay, so now I'm put into the slightly awkward position of introducing myself. But I'm the executive director of the UX Awards, and I've been active in the New York UX community for about 7 years. I teach UX at General Assembly, previously in San Francisco, then in London, soon in New York. And I've had my own UX consultancy for 7 years. And in the last year, I've been in Berlin up until now as CTO and head of product at a 40-person video, social video startup. But now I'm back. And I've worked in all kinds of tech, have a master's from ITP and an MBA from Oxford, and right now I'm figuring out where I'm going to go next, whether it's going to be San Francisco or New York. So, moving right along, evaluation criteria. Now that you've seen the variety of judges, you're probably wondering how we possibly decided who was going to win. And it's a great question. We recommend certain things, and if any of you have come to talks to hear about the awards before coming tonight, you'll know that we have this 8-point recommendation scale that we talk about, which is outlined here, really about identifying user needs, clearly solving their problems, well-designed and intuitive, great process in the submission, user research and testing, coherent case study, impressive product, and great impact. But that's one point of view, and you'll hear that the judges have a slightly divergent point of view. Our point of view is that by following somewhat of a formula, you can at least get to the B level. And hopefully we can also, through this platform, advance the industry to an A level. So our aim is both. And if we look at how this compares, here's what Katie had. And Katie, do you have anything to add to your list?
Sorry, I'm looking at my list. Yeah, that's pretty right. After I sent that to you, I think I got a little bit more articulate on it, but that is definitely it. I would say the one thing that's missing is probably daring. After all, we are at an award ceremony. What we're trying to identify are those that are really pushing the envelope with the work that they do. So while, of course, I look for something that's useful, usable, and desirable, definitely was looking for things that were doing it differently, smarter, more creatively than we've seen in the past, because after all, what we want to end this discussion with in the awards is that we can all look and be thankful for these people that have created this work that are inspiring others and finding the best solutions possible.
Great. So next up, we heard from a very succinct judge, Alex.
Well, so I've had a range of experiences from enterprise software where mind-blowing is that it actually just works, to ads and brand experiences, which I think have a lot more in common with design than we as a community spend time thinking about. And the brand and marketing people use terms like mind-blowing and soul-inspiring. UX does not use those terms very often, and we aim more for the simple, beautiful, well-crafted as the sort of benchmark for what the products are.
Great. Now we've got Giles's list.
Well, I guess of all the criteria on my list, the thing that I cared about most, and the thing that I enjoyed reading about most when I was going through the submissions was the impact it had on users. I mean, I was really looking for evidence that when this thing got out into the real world, it made a difference to people's lives. And there were some just wonderful stories that we got told along the way, and that for me was the most enjoyable part of judging, and the thing that really swung me on a lot of my choices.
Great. And we've got Ian.
Probably about the same sorts of things. I think the themes are going to come up, but yeah, there's clearly. I was definitely looking for rigorous process and thinking. I was definitely looking for quality outputs in the same way that I think we all care about. But there was a sort of more visceral level for me, which was I think somewhere around whether it was. Because not all the projects were finished and out in the world, and so therefore you couldn't actually always have a quantitative measure of their impact. But some sense in which there was that either that was implied or was very very clear, something that you could get a sense of it being important. And I think personally, just in terms of my own view of things, I was looking for things which would set an example for what we should all aspire to. This is meant to be an award ceremony that inspires others, so the work should be stuff which sets out a stage for, or sets out a marker for others to look to and say, oh, okay, that's what UX should be aspiring to. And so there were quite a few in there that did that.
Great, thank you. And lastly, Bill was very kind to provide a slide for me.
Well, this was part of my talk earlier today, so I'll have to take 20 more minutes. And what I look at, well, one thing that's not here that I was passionate about is what really moves this industry forward. What's a solution that we haven't seen before that is groundbreaking, that makes us think differently? And that might be even the highest order bit, but I think everything fits under effective. First, I had to find things that all started with E. So elegance, as a designer, elegant design is I think, always a goal. And can you really express what this brand is all about, what this product is about, with the look and the feel and the design language, as well as the features that are in it, and do those come together gracefully? So,
thank you. So we had 3 judges who did not submit their criteria, but they're allowed to speak anyway. So Jennifer, Peter, and Jake, would you like to add anything important and brief?
Yes, thank you for getting me in trouble.
So homework.
Oh, yeah, I know. So I think I was on a plane somewhere. I think that for me, one of the things that hasn't been called out yet is risk-taking. I just really loved when people sort of pushed the limits with whatever they were looking at, whether it was an ecosystem or something very specific, and were willing to take risks with what their solution was. That was super inspiring. I also loved the ones, or one of the things I valued the most, I think, in the judging rounds were where there was just super clear pain points identified that might or might not be new, and then the inspiration and insights from those was applied super clearly to the solution, showing that people really understood their audience and were willing to either assuage the pain or delight or both. And I thought that was fabulous. And then I think just looking at like end-to-end ecosystems, so where we saw solutions that were either new, existing or new products or services or business ideas, but they went beyond. So, you expected it to be sort of in the bounds of like X to Y, and then it got to Z, and it went maybe back to A, and like thinking about the whole thing holistically was super inspiring.
Great.
I honestly don't have much to add. The one thing I'll kind of agree with in the way I put it is often when it comes to this type of UX design, we all are familiar with a process. And I think too often we just kind of let the process run. And one of my criteria was who took advantage, who used this process, but came up with a surprising, uncommon result that still works, that still connects, but is not just simply what you get by painting by numbers, and has its own breath of life.
Yeah, I'll build on that. I think the thing that I definitely didn't vote for was a sort of set process. In fact, judging this really made me, really intensified my allergic reaction to people who just followed a step in line design process, expecting that'll just spit out some type of answer. I mean, it spits out like an okay answer, but the things that I was looking for are certainly things that are brilliant and transformational. There's so many new technologies, new markets, new social conditions, and just massive opportunities across the board that the people who are looking to transform with new approaches were certainly what I was drawn to.
Great, thank you. So why do we do this? Why are we talking about this? It's because we want to get to the core question of what's great UX. It's our community definition, our evolving role in the industry, and it's a conversation and consensus to get here. There is no one definition of UX, as you can see, and that's the point, which gets right into our next thing, the judging process, where we had to combine all these divergent opinions. So I think it's important to set the stage before we give the awards so you know how did we judge and how do we make the decision. Let me break it down. First, we vet the awards internally by our 10-point system, which we then translated into a 1 to 5 score. And this is where we caught errors and things that may have been omitted, and it also helped to just give a baseline ranking for the judges, although, of course, they all evaluated them independently, and as you'll see, our score matched none of their scores whatsoever, or very little. Then the judges all had to score each one independently on a score of 1 to 5, and you can see that the A through H at the top is each a judge. And this is the heat map results, the real heat map we used in the meeting that shows the top scorers. And each judge did this on their own, and then we got together to discuss it. And during that discussion, as you can imagine, lots came out. And basically, a product or entry had to have an advocate. It had to have at least one judge say, I think this one is award-worthy, and put it forth for discussion. And then there was ensuing discussion amongst the judges, and a lot of times judges change their mind. They might have actually given something a very high score, and then they don't think it's award-worthy when they get in the room and discuss it with others. So opinions do change, and they did change quite a lot this time. But this also points to the fact that you need to have a submission where you're considering your target audience just like any other user experience. And in this case, your target audience is the judges. So if you're not giving the judges what they need to judge your submission, you can't expect to get an award. And you'll see that a top score isn't the only thing that matters. It just gets you into the beginning of the discussion. So during the meeting, we had a re-voting at the end. And you can see, once again, there was quite a lot of debate about who should get what award, which also shows the fact that all the winners, whether you get the grand prize or an honorable mention, are all high quality, because even amongst these 8, there was a divergence of opinion about who deserved what. And you can see that this guy here in the middle, Mr. Number 5, you know, he didn't get an award, which is sad because he was in the top scores, and these guys beat him out, which shows that your ranking is not the only thing that matters. You need that exceptional criteria to really stand out. And if you want to see that in a nice chart, this shows that the top score, the top line, is the average score of the winners over 4 years. And the next one down is the top 20's average score. So you can see that top rated doesn't mean award winning. But it's definitely much higher than the top 50% or the average. And, last chart, this shows how it breaks down for the different levels. So you can see from 2013 on, there's hardly any difference in score between honorable mention and grand prize. They're very, very similar. Grand is definitely higher, but the other ones, it's all about the same. So everyone should be very happy with their award because it shows that all of them were exceptional. That's the point. And what do you win when you get an award? Well, first off, you guys won because you got a ticket and a lot of other people didn't because we had to cancel tickets. So that's great. And the winners here this is the actual awards we're giving out from the bottom up tonight. 1 student honorable mention, a student, a most popular, top-rated, People's Choice, honorable mention, bronze, silver, gold, and grand. What do you get? Well, the winners, depending on what level you get, everyone gets a Loop 11 certificate, everyone gets an UXies tote bag, everyone gets a Rosenfeld Media book, everyone gets either a crystal trophy or a frame certificate. The silver levels can get some champagne, gold gets $250, and grand prize gets $1,000. But also, everyone in the audience wins because there were lots of perks, and in case you're wondering how to find out about these, I'll be sending out an email later this week to attendees that gives you details about how to redeem or apply for all of these things. So, we're all winners. And just before we get started, I know everyone's keen, but we need to take a moment to thank our 2015 partners, which are all over the world. So we had global partners, including TechCrunch, we had IXDA Taiwan, Berlin, Berlin School. Groups all over the world had helped support the UX Awards, including also several, of course, in the US, Colorado, Boston, LA, SF, you name it, DC. So we had many people help fill this room, IXDA New York, ITP, MIT Enterprise Forum, UX Acrobatics, as well as ACM New York, Brooklyn UX Meetup, Rutgers, UX and Data, New York UXPA. So thank you to all of our partners in helping us to evangelize the awards and get the word out. It's really been great.